And that says we're live with Brad Owen. Brad, good morning. Good morning from New Zealand, but good evening in Las Vegas.
Yep. Yeah, it's a little after 4 p.m. here.
Nice. I love this internet thing because we get to talk to people all over the place. Yesterday we were speaking to Los Angeles. I had a musician from Los Angeles. Today we're talking to Las Vegas. As
It's
I
pretty
turn
cool.
as I turn my background volume down because I forgot to do it. I've been saying the last couple of times. This is welcome to my bedroom. I have a studio in central Dunedin here in New Zealand. We're the southernmost city in New Zealand, and but we're in lockdown still, so can't go to the studio. So broadcasting from my bedroom, which is unusual, but that's what we're doing. Yeah, and it's just been lovely to connect with people all over the world, having chats about all sorts of things. So welcome and thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks a lot, man. How did you become a Dodgers fan? I'm a big Giants fan. So
I like the Dodgers. I like I'm probably, if I'm honest, sort of like the sports more than any individual teams. Like a big Chicago Bulls fan from the '90s, obviously
sure.
following who they were. But right now, it's like I support probably more the sport as opposed to any individual team. Someone from New Zealand, I do throw my hat. Like I remember the Lakers and the Dodgers were basically all who we knew, sort of way back in the '80s. In fact, I can remember being a little fella and having Lakers versus Celtics kind of on our national television on a Wednesday night, free to air sort of thing. So that's sort of the history of it. Also, I like wearing caps. So I have a mix between I love baseball, I love basketball in particular. It's probably my number one. I like football, what we call gridiron, but yeah, I also like caps. And so actually, I've got look right behind me. There we go. I could have worn the Indians cap today. I could have worn the Houston cap today. It's just so it's what it is. So who do you follow?
I'm a big San Francisco Giants fan. So
Right.
the Dodgers are the main rival of the San Francisco
Oh.
for going back to when they were both in New York.
Well, look, I don't want to offend, so let's do this. I mean,
Thank you, man. This is
there you go.
much much better.
Are the are,
Whoops.
are, are the Rolling Stones okay, or are you more of a kind of Aerosmith guy?
I do like Aerosmith.
Oh, okay.
Little little what's that one song that they had in Armageddon that was real big?
It's the more
I want to sing.
the ballad one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, well, listen. I'm for people who don't know, who are just tuning in or maybe finding us live. You are a professional poker player. You reside in Las Vegas at the moment, and I'm fascinated by the world of professional poker. And I follow a bunch of online on YouTube clips, and watch a lot of poker on YouTube. I came across your videos. I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. Your tutorial sort of videos. It's maybe more than tutorials, aren't they? How would I describe your videos? We get to watch you play, let's say, 10 hands out of an 8 hour stretch, and then you commentate on why you're doing what you're doing. So it's more like a perhaps director's cut than a tutorial, but in doing so, you're explaining the theories behind why you're doing it, and it's a really cool teaching tool. So I watch it, and I think they're personally the best ones on there. I watched. I just came across Daniel Negreanu's just the other day. I don't know if he's been doing it for a long time, but his just popped up on my feed the other day. And I used to watch Doug Polk's a bit, but yeah, when I found yours, all the others have gone to the waste bin, and yours are the only ones I pretty much watch in that context right now. And they're really enjoyable. I really like watching them.
Great, man. Thanks a lot. Yeah, Negroni's been doing them. There's a few other buddies of mine who do a really good job um, that are worth checking out. Andrew Nemi, he's the person who I was inspired from.
Right.
And, we become really good friends. We host poker events where we invite the viewers to come play poker with us. So that's usually where the vlogs come from.
Yeah.
So we kind of have a residency in Los Angeles this year. So we're there once a month. And people come out, they play, I video the session. A couple weeks later, I'll come out with a video of me, like you said, commentating over it. I go through my thought process, and that goes, a lot into general poker strategy, but I'm also kind of just telling you how I'm feeling throughout the session, and I try to make people feel like they're there with me. If I lose a big hand, for instance, then maybe I'm what is called on tilt a little bit.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm not playing my best game. Maybe I'm making some decisions that aren't quite as good as normal. And, I try and be as honest as I can about all that stuff.
And it's cool to watch. It's cool to watch the honesty about it as well. I like, and the humor as well. There was one I was watching the other day, and because I mean, you've obviously been doing it for a while. I discovered you maybe 6 months ago. In my feed, sometimes one that pops up that's 18 months old is the one that pops up, sort of thing. So I'm not sure when it was, but there was one where you basically tricked us all when we were watching it, say, and portrayed it like what had flopped was the royal flush. So you say, oh, what comes out? It's royal flush. No, just kidding. And you put the real cards up there, and it's it's fun. It's fun to watch. It's entertaining, and it teaches as well. Teaches me, at least. That's what I like, because I watch it and go, because as an absolute hack poker player, which is what I would describe myself as, it's interesting hearing some of the theories behind why a professional would do what they do compared to buddies around a coffee table sort of thing. Because buddies around a coffee table who don't do it as a profession, who maybe are just doing it for a laugh, maybe one of the players never plays and the other three are kind of basically hacks. You don't necessarily have the theories to follow, so it's a way you can either win or lose, get busted or whatever with terrible hands because people aren't quite sure what the theories should be. And I was wondering, for you, is it difficult to play a hack? Because a hack doesn't know the rules, so a hack sometimes takes the chances of playing a hand they normally shouldn't, which means you may not expect what they've got, harder to read sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in general, I think they're easier to read because they're not as good at masking certain physical tells. But physical tells aren't really that important. Most of the time I try and just maintain like a normal general strategy until I kind of understand a player's tendency. So after maybe 20 to 30 minutes of seeing someone play particular hands, I'll kind of adapt and change how I might play against an average person based on how they're playing. If that makes sense.
So the time frame to learn the patterns, like I've heard, I'm not sure who it was, but a professional talk about the physical tells is far less important than sort of what the hand is saying. The story that the person's selling, as opposed to what they're looking like and what they're doing and what twitch they've got. Yeah,
the best tell is betting patterns.
Right.
So you might have to pay attention for a little while to, understand what people are doing. I mean, are they raising pre-flop a lot? Because if they are, then they can't have good hands all the time, right? And then I pay attention a lot at showdown. So, for instance, if someone shows down a hand and they maybe made a flush on the river, I see, did they bet, when they had the draw the whole time is like semi-bluffs? Do they check back draws? That kind of a thing. Or when they have the nuts, do they trap? Or do they continue to bet? All those types of things.
Is it possible to play a game like regularly and not have those patterns? Like I used to go down to a Tuesday night game here in Dunedin, and I had this idea that, for people who don't know, the flop is the first three cards the dealer turns over to match with your hand. I used to wait for the flop, and if it was red dominant, I'd play that hand aggressively. If it was black dominant, I'd play it more passively. So in other words, I wasn't deciding how I was going to play it. I'd let the flop decide how I was going to play it. And I thought that would be quite a good way to hide. Or as a professional pro, would you just see through that straight away anyway?
I would not do your strategy.
Okay. I'm a hack.
You want to do things where, you can't just bet based on what the flop is and not be paying attention to your card. So if you want to bluff, for instance, it's good to do that with what's called backdoor draws. So if you have two diamonds in your hand, for instance, and there's one diamond on the flop, then another diamond on the turn is going to give you a flush draw, and that's a hand that you can continue to bluff with. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of a good candidate for a hand to do that with. But you don't want to just be doing it just based on whether the flops are mostly red or mostly black.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that I was going to, I would still have to have a decent enough hand to see the flop, but then that would be anyway. It's your story is fascinating. When you were in high school, because what you are you? I've seen one of your videos again. I'm not sure whether this was yesterday or 2 years ago you filmed it, but I saw the video when you had your 30th. So are you early 30s now? I'm assuming you're still 30.
Yeah, I thought I was 31, and then my girlfriend told me the other day that I'm actually 32.
Okay, so you're 32. So 15 years ago, when you're in high school, what was the plan for your life? Like normally at the end of high school, you kind of go university to do this, career to do this, or at least you have some ideas. When you were there in high school, what was the plan?
Going to college was always the plan. So if I didn't go to college, my parents would have been pretty upset. But in the back of my mind, I was taking poker pretty seriously even at that point. I'd read my first poker book in high school. I was sneaking out of the house to play poker at night on weekdays and on the weekends. My curfew was midnight, so my parents didn't really leave me much of a choice.
Right.
Yeah, man, I just loved poker, and I took it more seriously than all my friends right away. My dad was in the casino industry.
Oh, wow.
And he took home this CD-ROM game called Hoyle Casino, and I played against simulated opponents on that game, like for, hours every day after school. I just really loved that. And it was something that I felt like I was naturally good at.
Right.
I've always been very math inclined, and I've loved strategy games. I played a lot growing up, like Monopoly and, all sorts of games with my older brother. So yeah, I just stuck with it. I went to college at the University of San Diego, where you could play at the Native American properties once you were 18, which isn't really the case for basically most other cities in the U.S. when it comes to gambling. Online poker was big back then, so I was losing money online, trying to learn the ropes. And then I won a satellite into the main events right after college. I was 22, and I didn't have a job out of college. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I just decided to kind of focus on poker as much as I could. And I bought into the $100 satellite, which was the biggest tournament that I'd ever played at that point, and won a seat. So that was 2010, and I did pretty well on my day one. I was top 50 in chips for my flight, and then I busted in the middle of day two, unfortunately. But that was enough to kind of give me the confidence to pursue it more, and also kind of show my parents that I could do it. I think they had a lot more confidence in me after that.
Yeah. That's, and for people who aren't aware, when you talk about you won a satellite, that means you basically won a smaller tournament to give you access to the bigger tournament.
Yeah, so it was $100 buy-in for me, and then I won that, which gave me a seat into the $10,000 main event in Las Vegas.
And I do wonder about the game of poker and how much is skill and how much is luck. Because obviously, if you constantly get dealt, a pair of aces, you're going to constantly be a winner. So there's the luck of the draw, so to speak, but then the skill behind it. And I think I remember watching Phil Ivey talking about, as he got better, he seemed to get luckier. In other words, he was playing his cards better and he was winning more consistently. But I also wonder how you see your Phil Hellmuths who have got whatever 13, 14 bracelets, whatever it is, but of the recent, let's say 5 years, there's very few people that win those big tournaments kind of more than once. And I wonder if that's testament to, even though a great deal of skill is involved, still getting the right cards is an essential part of winning the big ones as well.
Yeah, getting the right cards is huge, especially in tournaments. There's so much luck, and the fields are enormous these days. So it's a little bit different. You'll never see anybody win 15 bracelets again, I don't think. It's just so difficult with how many people are entering. I mean, the Colossus and the Big 50, they're getting 20,000+ entrants.
Wow.
So it's very, very difficult to get through those. But in some of the smaller events, there's 50 to 200 people in some of the other bracelet events for mixed games and stuff.
So it can be a smaller. I was going to say smaller number of entrants is 200. You said 50. Can be a smaller event. It's 50 to win a bracelet, or is it?
There's some that are really. I forget what the minimum is for it to actually qualify as a bracelet event. I think I want to say 49, somewhere in that range, 49, 50. But they had a short deck event last year, and I'm pretty sure that was a bracelet event. And they have some other ones. They have some $50,000 buy-in ones. They have $1 million buy-in ones occasionally. So
It's madness. When you start talking that kind of money, it just feels like madness. I kind of go, well, I could just use that buy-in money to live pretty comfortably for a good portion of the rest of my life if I wanted to. But it's buy-in money for a game, basically. It's terrific. And those the people who are playing those sorts of tournaments, are they normally the high rollers who have 100 million in the bank, or are they the ones that they kind of have sponsors that get them into there, and then obviously if they win, they split with those sponsors again, or is it a combination?
It's a combination. So it's mainly business moguls and a few other top professionals that are backed by other big business guys.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your basically. It's a little bit like I think it was. I remember Michael Jordan saying, doesn't matter." It's funny how the richer you get, the more free stuff you get given. And it was a photo of him in his garage, and he had like 18, I don't know what it was, but it was certainly in the teens, sets of golf clubs just all the way around his garage, and he was like he hadn't paid for any of them because I guess that's the same when you get to the top end of anything, any kind of sport. You're a poker player at the top end, then you don't pay your entry fee anymore. Someone spots you in, and you get to go and play and win more bracelets if you can.
Yep.
What's the so in the World Series of Poker, in those sort of top echelon tournaments, what's the best result at the moment that you've come away with?
I'm not really a tournament guy. I'm more of a cash game player. So there's basically two routes you can go as a professional poker player. And you either focus on cash games where you can buy in and you can play whatever stakes that you want.
Yep.
And you can leave whatever time you want. Or you can play tournaments, and that's set up so everybody enters and then you play down to one winner. And I've mostly gone the cash game route. Tournaments, haven't played that many, and I don't have a ton of tournament results. So my best tournament score was actually probably the satellite that I won at 22. Right. There's been a few other tournaments that have cashed in since then that are bigger tournaments, but they weren't bigger than a $10,000 score. I also got $1,500 in cash for that satellite as well.
Right. Is it something that, as a part, I mean, this is your career. You are a professional poker player. Do you want to have a bracelet? Do you want to have that kind of that check in your name so that, I mean, because I'm sure, like someone who has an Oscar, that adds to their next film. Have a series of bracelets or a few bracelets must add to your next meetup player. I noticed in some of your meetup games you're saying such and such bracelet winner has
Sure.
joined us. Is that something that you do attain to try and do?
It would be great. The tournaments that I typically buy into are those massive field ones, though. They're going to have several thousand players. So it's really, really difficult to come away with a bracelet in those. I think a more feasible goal would be to final table one of those. I think that would be amazing if I could do that. But a bracelet, I think, seems a little bit far-fetched unless I start playing some of those other bracelet events and get better at these kind of more obscure poker games that don't have as many entrants.
Do you know the history of the bracelet? It seems quite a strange prize. Like in America, in American professional sports, you have the rings, and other sports around. No other sport seems to have rings like the American professional sports do. But other places will have trophies or tankards, but the bracelet seems to be quite an interesting one. Do you have any idea about the background as to why?
No, I'm not sure why it became a bracelet. No.
It's interesting though, and some of those crazy bracelets, like at the final table of the World Series of Poker, are worth like squillions of dollars just by themselves.
Yeah.
With this current coronavirus crisis, I understand you guys in Las Vegas are in some form of isolation as well. I don't think you're in the same sort of isolation as us here in New Zealand. We're basically, I want to say ordered. It sounds like a Stalinist state. We're not ordered. I guess we are. The country is on a lockdown for one more week where we're all in our houses unless you have to go outside. Like there's no choices. If you're an essential service or, for example, you need to go to the supermarket to get food to live off. Other than that, you're basically not allowed to leave your property other than to exercise in your neighborhood. So we're doing that for another week. In Las Vegas at the moment, I understand you're on some kind of lockdown because the casinos and that are shut. So what does a professional poker player do when you're stuck inside? Is it just constant online poker?
Pretty much, yeah. I still have some content, but I don't know how long. So I have some stored footage, but I don't know how long this is all going to last. So I haven't been in any rush to put it out. I'm just kind of taking my time, spreading it out like every week and a half or 2 weeks. I'll put out a new video.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll put out one probably on Monday, and then I have an idea for another one. Then I'll probably put out another week and a half or 2 weeks after that.
Yeah.
And then I'll have to really get creative on what I put on the YouTube channel. But yeah, I've just been playing online a ton. I've been inviting the viewers to play with me, which has been really cool. And that's what I've been focused on. I've also been on the go basically for the last year and a half, it seems like, doing meetup games in other parts of the country. And I was in Spain earlier this year, and I was in London before that. So it's really nice for me to have a little bit of a break. I feel like I was getting a little bit worn down. And so it kind of came at an okay time for me. Obviously, like, this is not something that anybody ever wants to have to go through, but I'm doing the best that I can, I think.
When watching your videos and you do let's say on average a 4 to 8 hour session, it would appear that seems to be a pretty sort of standard time frame. It would seem that playing those sort of $2-5 games, walking away with between $500 and $1,000 profit is a pretty good night. Like, that would be a pretty good result. So I'm wondering, when you're playing the online poker stuck at home, are you up? And if you are up, I mean, what would be a good result from a day of playing online poker as opposed to, playing in a casino?
I was up. So I was up like $800. Now I'm down like $300 because I went on a pretty bad run the last couple days. But I just play small stakes online. It's really just to keep my mind busy. Online poker is a much different beast than playing live.
Yeah.
So the players are much better, and you can't really win as much or at least I can't win as much as a live poker player. So typically I don't focus on playing online if everything's normal. But for now, it's good just to keep my mind sharp. I'm mostly playing 25 cent, 50 cent on WSOP.com, and then $1, $2 on this app called Poker Bros. So if I can win really like between 300 and 500 on any of the sites, and that's a good day for me at this point.
It's interesting you say they're better players online. Is that just simply because the pool of people who can play is so much bigger? Like, in America, there's 300 plus million people. Everyone can access that internet game, but only the people in Las Vegas can access the walk-up game that you're playing. Is that just come down to that?
No, it's usually better. The bigger the player pool, usually the better.
Yep.
Because that means there's going to be more recreational players in there.
Oh, okay. More fish like me. More donkeys like me. Something like that.
Yeah. So, the bigger the player pool, the better. And the reason why it's tougher online is because people who play online are generally going to be younger players between the ages of 20 and 45 or 20 and 50. People, they see way more hands a lot faster in online.
Right.
You can play multiple tables at the same time, and there's no manual dealer dealing the cards. It's all automatic, so it's just, you don't have to wait for anyone to shuffle and deal. So for those two reasons, you see way more hands, and you just get better a lot quicker. The learning curve isn't as steep.
So someone playing a year of online poker every day is going to have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times as many hands as someone who is playing every evening for a year live in person, or whatever it would be.
Yeah. Oh,
that's interesting. So I also would wonder, as you've said, looking for those cues for tells, you don't get that obviously in the online world as well. So it literally just comes down to reading the story and backing your own cards. It must be harder to get any information from the opposing side other than those patterns, I guess.
Yeah, you gotta pay more attention to bet sizing, and you have to take notes. So that's one thing that's been really helpful is if someone has a particular strategy, like if they bluff a lot, then I'll put a note in there that they bluff a lot in these cases. And then, or if they just play really tight, then I'll put a note in that says, don't pay this person off. Those kind of things.
So you can store that on the actual app or on the game itself. There's a place to keep notes for that person, are there? Or are you saying just on the side?
No. Within the app or site.
How do you know, and this is with no disrespect to people who, or companies who make these apps, but how do you know that they're genuine? Like, how do you know that some company's not fudging the system, or that it's as fair, if I can put it that way, as a dealer doing a wash and then a shuffle and then a deal? How is that protected, and how do you know as a player or feel as a player that is as fair, the randomness of the nature of it?
The sites that are available to people publicly are rigorously tested and verified by third-party companies for randomness and fairness.
Right.
And to some extent, that's true for the apps as well, not as rigorous of a test.
So that would mean if you want to be safe in that area, to go to the most reputable sites, I would think, the ones that are tested the most.
Generally, but the games can be a lot better on the apps.
Better as in better between players, or better looking and better feeling?
Better in terms of more profitable. That the players aren't as skilled.
So better for you. Yeah, a bit more donkeys, more people.
Well, better for anyone who plays on there in general. If the general population of players isn't as good.
Do you there obviously be people like yourself? Say you're a cash player, so you come up to a casino and you play with, 10 tables. They're full up playing. That would be the same as online. You'd expect there'd be people who are playing as professional poker players, but they just play online and nothing else.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who just play online, nothing else.
What kind of money can you? I mean, I guess it's a how long's a piece of string question. It's a stupid question, but also how much money can you make? But I guess that depends on your stakes and what you do. To be a poker pro and sort of living the life, what would you need to bring in? Is it sort of a minimum you need to win $100K a year so you can have buy-ins for, or what would you expect to need to budget to win to be a poker pro, just to be able to function, day to day as a player, and obviously as a citizen with a mortgage and a whatever.
Sure, it's a tough question to answer. For me, I'd want to be making $100,000 a year within this industry every year, just so I can have. And I'm not making that now because I'm splitting my time between playing poker and creating poker content, and traveling and hosting these meetup games. So typically for me, I'll make, somewhere between 35 and 50,000 a year playing poker.
So that's just from poker. Because I was thinking, you seem to have a perfect model, because I imagine you're monetized for YouTube, and most of your YouTube clips seem to get sort of between 400 and 600,000 views, maybe a bit more for some. And then I would imagine, I don't know this, and you don't need to tell me your business, but I would imagine if you organize residencies and you're organizing, meetups at casinos, then there must be a kickback for that. Would only make sense if you're bringing 50 people into their casino. So it seems that you've set up a model where not only is there the poker winnings, but there's other potential income streams coming to you as well, which seems to be the perfect way to do it. It's like literally not all your eggs in one basket.
Right. Yeah, it's great. I mean, I'm doing things. I would have never dreamed that my poker career would be where it's at now. And so I'm really thankful for that. So yeah, the YouTube revenue, it's doing pretty well. It's getting hit a little bit just because advertisers right now don't want to pay as much to market on YouTube during the coronavirus. So ad revenue's down probably like 60% of what it was.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So that's just because people are, there's no point advertising the casinos at the moment because the casinos aren't open. That's the reason that it's down, that sort of idea, that because of coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just casinos that do marketing, before my YouTube videos begin, just marketing in general.
Yeah.
Because people have lost their jobs, they're not working, they don't have income coming in, so it's hard for them to spend money. We don't know how long this is going to last, so people just aren't spending as much in general. And the stock market's getting hit pretty hard, and all those things.
I wonder if, I mean, you often see ironically, when people are in financial difficult times, things like, people purchase more guns, more alcohol, and I wonder if they gamble more because they're like, I now need to find an income source. And I wonder if, have you noticed it all, although you've said you're not an online player a lot of the time, are there more people playing online at the moment because A, they've lost job, and maybe B, they've got time because everyone's at home as well?
Yeah, there's a ton more people playing online for sure. I mean, people don't have much to do, so playing poker is just a great way to keep your mind busy, and gambling's always fun.
Yeah. It was interesting you pointed out maths before. I'm just trying to think of her name. She's an English comedian, Victoria Corin, someone or other, Victoria Corin Smith, or she's an English comedian. She's also a poker player. And I heard her talking about why you're good at poker, and she said, because I'm good at math. And it seems to be quite a big part of it. If you were going to give a beginner some advice on, starting poker, someone who was, they were academically okay, what's some of the biggest things you need to understand and learn to sort of get into the game, not necessarily to be a pro, but just to be a competent and good poker player?
I mean, you just have to look for very small edges, and then those are going to add up over time and that'll help you develop an overall strategy that'll make you profitable. But in terms of math, you have to understand just how many cards are going to help you, what percentage you're likely going to have to win a hand at showdown. You have to understand pot odds. Those are kind of it's tough to talk about those things without going into much greater detail to give listeners an understanding. But there's just a few basic math concepts. It's not really difficult. Anybody who has like a high school education in math can probably grasp it pretty easily if they just put in some time.
My biggest struggle with playing live with just, people is I always lose track on how much is in the pot. And that's why I like playing online, because it says it and it's right there. And I know, well, if I'm going to bet about 2/3 the pot, this is what I need to bet. But when I'm playing live, I completely lose track. And therefore, if I was to make a bet that was, say, pot size bet, but I don't know how much the pot is, then I can be sending the completely wrong signal, telling the wrong story, because I've lost track of what the pot is. That's my biggest problem.
Yeah.
But it's fun. So I wanted to talk to you as well about poker in general and poker players in general. Because of the number of bracelets, is Phil Hellmuth the greatest ever? Or the other conversation, actually maybe not the last couple of years, but certainly in the last decade, has been Phil Ivey has been talked about as the great. Who do you think, who's the Michael Jordan of the poker world? The greatest there was and potentially will ever be?
I would say, I mean, Phil Ivey to me is the best who's ever played poker in terms of, because he's just a good player overall. He's good at a variety of different poker games, not just Texas Hold'em. He has, I think, 10 bracelets in a pretty short period of time. And he's really, really good at cash games as well. So he's not just a tournament player, whereas Hellmuth, I would say, and I think that he would probably agree with me, is mainly just good at tournaments. He's
Right.
not nearly as good in cash games.
And he was, I don't think this is disrespectful to say, but he was playing poker when not many people were, smaller pools, and potentially easier just statistically to win a bracelet, like back in the 80s and 90s, wasn't he?
Yeah, so his first bracelet he won, I believe, in '89.
Right.
I think he was the youngest one to win the main event. I think he was 24 at that time.
Wow.
But he's won plenty of bracelets recently, so against really, really tough fields. And so I think that you can say hands down he's the best tournament player. I don't think that's unfair to say, and he's still relevant, which is more than you can say for a lot of his contemporaries like 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's very true. Are there people in the game at the moment, sort of the elder statesmen, that you look up to personally, and you kind of, I want to emulate them?
Yeah, I mean, Phil Ivey seems, he's that person for me.
Right.
I just think he's the coolest, and super talented, and just the way he handles himself, everything about him seems cool.
Have you had a chance to play with him very much?
No, I've only seen the back of his head once, really. I've seen him walking around the WSOP a few more times, but I remember he played at the same table that I played at my first time playing the main event. But it was like a day later. So I just remember walking over to try and get a glimpse of him, and the back of his head was facing the rail. So that was all I could see at that time. But I've seen him, walking around the Rio during the World Series of Poker a few other times, but I haven't had any conversations with him. He's like the one big name in poker that I haven't had any real personal experiences with.
And that's just
But
is that just
I have, and Helmuth, and most of those guys I have.
and that's just circumstantial that you haven't managed to connect with him. There's nothing. He doesn't play fewer tournaments or anything. It's just you haven't crossed paths. Is that sort of all it is?
He's a little bit better at keeping to himself. I think he's in Asia a lot, playing the really, really big games in Macau. And so he's not like a content creator as well either. So like Negreanu is a content creator. So we go to similar functions. We're in the same spaces. So we're more familiar with each other.
Yeah. That's the other thing about poker players. Like when they get to a certain level, I guess it would be like playing a game of golf with Tiger Woods or whoever the number one golf player in the world is. Invites to places in Asia especially seem to be on the table, come across and, we'll pay you $1 million to come across and just play at our table sort of thing. That's a nice perk that some of the top guys would get. And I'm not suggesting that that's happened to Phil Hellmuth. I don't know the numbers involved, but being sought after just to basically sit at our table and play please.
Mm-hmm.
Are you someone who wants to use poker and sort of, I mean, it's a silly question to ask now because there's no planes in the air, but sort of want to travel the world and, go and do the Aussie Millions and go and do, it's just a way to see the world, come down here to Dunedin and go to the casino in Queenstown and, just sort of play?
Yeah, that's kind of the goal for me. It's a lot more fun to make videos when I'm going to new places. So the video of London was really fun. I did 2 videos of Spain, and yeah, that's really the dream.
When you play in different currencies, does it ever get confusing? Like it'll be euros in Spain and pounds in England and obviously dollars in America, or are the chips always the chips and it's really just proportional as to what's in front of you?
The currencies don't matter so much, but the chip denominations do. So when I was playing in Spain, for instance, the green chips there are 50 euro chips, whereas in Las Vegas, they're $25 chips.
Yeah.
So a few times I bet green chips thinking they were 25s and they were 50s.
Yeah.
And so that got me.
Where do you want to go? Where's the places? If you could do a list of top 3 places to visit to play poker, where would it be?
I'm not familiar with the New Zealand poker scene, but New Zealand is one of the top places that I'd like to go in general. So I hear that New Zealand is everything cool about Australia except for none of the poisonous animals. Is that true?
I would think we're a bit cooler than Australia, even without the poisonous animals. But maybe that's my little brother, like Canada thing coming out. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, New Zealanders and Australians are pretty similar lifestyle. They're warmer than us because they're a bit more, they're a bit closer to the, the equator. But yeah, okay. So New Zealand to Australia is Canada to the US. So so that means we're nicer with better healthcare. No, Australia's a nice place, but yeah, we're everything cool about Australia without the poison. It's probably true. I mean, the original landscape in New Zealand, there wasn't really even mammals. I think we had a bat and a seal, and that was all, and everything else was birds. So you don't typically get poisonous birds. There's the odd spider that'll give you a nasty bite, but it's more that they've got bacteria around them as opposed to having venom. And the only thing we do get that's poisonous is, I think there's some places where the redback spiders got into New Zealand, but it's come from Australia. So yeah, I sometimes watched, I watch a lot of documentaries, be it in the US or be it in Australia, and I see people camping or hunting, walking through long grass, and I just think, what could be in that long grass? Because in New Zealand, there's nothing. The bush is safe to walk through. You don't worry. There's no predators at all. I think I saw in Joe Rogan's feed the other day, he had a bobcat in his backyard. There's nothing. We have nothing that hunts you. in New Zealand at all.
That sounds good.
I don't know if that's a good sell or not. Yeah, we're a boring country.
No,
We've
it's a good
nothing
to
good
me. I
happens
mean, that's
here.
kind of been one of my biggest hangups of going to Australia, because I do think it'd be great to play poker out there. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I know that they have the Crown, Melbourne. I know they have Sydney and a few other ones. So that'd be cool.
Just, you know, I don't ever want to speak ill, nicely of our, closest enemy, the Australians, but you're not going to come across anything there it is full of like 10 of the top 20 poisonous things in the world. But I've been to Australia, I don't know, 8 times. I mean, I've seen big spiders and stuff, but I've never even seen anything that's been poisonous when visiting over there. Especially if you're going to somewhere like Melbourne, you're in the city, I would say go for it. I would say not be too worried about it.
I just realized I've got to change shirts real quick. You'll understand why in a second. Can you hold it down
Yeah,
just for a
This
minute
is-
while I change? Great.
So this is for people who are joining our live stream. This is a slight interruption with the live stream right now, but I hope you're enjoying what you're doing. If you want to find out more about what we do, then you can head to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/DEPT of conversation. And you can head to our website as well, which is www.thedoc.nz. I feel like I'm back in radio when you're doing like a segue between guests coming and going. And we're back again. You change your t-shirt. Why? Let me have a look up close. Oh, is it the All Blacks?
Yeah.
All Blacks, eh? Is this something that you know about? Are you a rugby person, or is it just something that you've heard of?
I'm not really a big rugby guy. Just my grandma, she went to New Zealand when I was young.
Yeah.
And she brought me back an All Black shirt.
Cool, man.
And then I just kind of like became a fake fan of the All Blacks. So when I see All Black stuff, I bought this in France actually, I think.
Right.
I just bought it. Yeah.
It seems to be, I guess, much like what you've just said. You're like Australia, but without the poison stuff. That's what people know about us, and they know the All Blacks. And it's getting a little bit less now, but for the last kind of 15 years or so, it's been Lord of the Rings. That's the other thing as well, because of
There's a big tourist attraction there, right? You can go see the Hobbit lands.
There's a lot. There's a lot. Yeah, when they filmed Lord of the Rings, Hobbiton is the location that they filmed it, and that's just out of a place called Matamata, which is sort of the central, not quite the central, but the upper central North Island, maybe an hour or two south of Auckland. And for the first 3 movies, they had this place called Hobbiton, and they basically started to take it apart. It was on a farmer's land, and he said, well, why don't we just leave it like this? People could come and see the set as to where Lord of the Rings was done. And it was all right. It was a bit run down. It wasn't the full thing. But then they filmed The Hobbit, and they rebuilt Hobbiton. And then I think Peter Jackson and the farmer went into a commercial agreement that they actually, after they rebuilt it, they left it in basically film set quality, so you can now actually visit Hobbiton. That looks like it was in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. But the other thing is, where I live at the bottom of the South Island, about a 3-hour drive from where I am is Queenstown, and Queenstown is up in the mountains. That's where all the skiing and winter sports goes on. Beautiful part of the world. A lot of the filming was done up there, so you can go to Queenstown and get a heli tour of the 10 sites from Lord of the Rings and go to all the places that was filmed as well. So, still a fairly large portion of our economy is still driven by that movie of 20 years ago. Yeah, so, and the other thing that people used to know us for, but this is more like maybe last century, is sheep. Because we used to have this stat that was, we had 20 sheep for every human being that was on the land here, which is not so much the case anymore. But yeah, no, but the All Blacks is great. I always talk to my American friends and contacts when they talk about coming here, and I go, come during I say come during winter. I guess most people try to get away from the winter. If you're in the North Island, winter's pretty temperate. It's not too bad. South Island, it gets a lot colder, but come during the All Black season, because there ain't nothing like it. I mean, often Americans freak out because we have no pads or that kind of stuff. We just play rugby. And people like me feel it for the rest of our lives with bad backs and that kind of stuff, who have played it for 20 years. But yeah, it's an experience of, it's that real, I don't know, I was going to say skin on skin. It's not skin on skin, but it's like it's just people crashing into each other I love it. It's my favourite sport. So we're talking about football before and basketball and that. It's just, an All Blacks test match will always win out over me, All Blacks versus Australia or South Africa. Greatest
Yeah.
game in the world. And they say that the All Blacks are the most successful sporting team in the history of the world because they have like an 85% win percentage. So
Yeah. Wow.
so yeah. So anyway, there's my little pitch to you as well. Should definitely come through. The poker scene in New Zealand, I'm not sure. I've always wondered about contacting, the World Series of Poker. I've got a few connections through clients who are casinos in New Zealand, and going, what would happen? How could we bring like a kid poker or a Helmuth out here and kind of develop a tournament around them? So I'm not sure about the poker scene in New Zealand being particularly big. So there's a casino in Dunedin where I live, but there's not poker every night being played there. And sometimes it might only be one table. So there's games, but it's certainly nothing like I watch your meetups and there's like we fill 10 tables. It's nothing like that. There's only 4 million or 4.5 million of us here. Full stop. Remember?
Yeah. Yeah. Be tough to get a big event unless you fly people in.
Yeah, but we do have a lot of investment and a lot of people living here from Asia, from the Asian continent. So if you did have
Hmm.
a big name come through somewhere like Queenstown that has an international airport that goes straight to many cities throughout the southern hemisphere, you could probably draw people in, especially because these nutty poker players with a lot of money seem to want to play wherever they can, no matter what. But I don't know, something to think about. So see who we get down here to start up a tournament.
Well, if you ever want to organize it, let me know. I'll go down there.
Well, we play 2 and 5. Is that what you want to come down and do?
I mean, I would just be happy to go down there. Yeah. I mean, I think at this point, Andrew and I would love to just go to as many countries as we could and create videos from those casinos and highlight them
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
meet the people and see the culture and everything. Eat the
Well,
food.
as someone like yourself, someone who's now an influencer, basically, you got 200,000 YouTube subscribers. There is probably, I mean, countries, forget New Zealand, but countries do invite people to come across because they're aware that if they put video and content up on there, it's seen by hundreds of thousands of people. So, no, I think I think people like yourself have an opportunity around the world to do that, possibly even at the back end of this coronavirus thing when, let's say, the airlines are open again. So at the moment, we've got a restriction, like right now in New Zealand, that if anyone comes to the border, they have to be isolated for 14 days. Like that's been made law because the government here is trying to eradicate coronavirus. They're trying to get it down so that actually we as a country can sort of return to somewhat of a normal life, and keep everybody else at bay. But when, who knows what's going to happen? There's gosh, the name just popped out of my head. You get an injection. What's that called? To protect you from it. That word just jumped out of my head. Anyway, when they develop a vaccine, that's the word I was looking for. When they develop a vaccine and the world starts to get back to usual, people like yourself might have opportunities to, visit countries or visit places because people are going to want to open up again and open up quickly, and bring people into their economy as quickly as they can. Who knows?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens when everything gets a little bit more back to normal or when things start opening back up, because casinos are really about the worst place you could be if you're trying to protect yourself from coronavirus. Just the handling of chips and exchanging them back and forth with
Yeah,
other
of course.
people. It's about as bad as it gets. So
Yeah.
hopefully things will return to normal soon, but I don't really know what's going to happen with poker. The World Series of Poker, it came out today, is being postponed. So that usually happens at the end of May and goes until middle of July.
Mm-hmm.
So for this year, it's going to be postponed, which is the first year I think that's probably ever happened. And they're hoping that it'll take place in the fall instead. There's not too much information that's been out about that. But I mean, it's not looking too good for for poker in general, kind of
Well,
right now.
I mean, what about amongst your peers, your friends and family? What's the feeling? Because obviously here on the other side of the world, we get a I don't say a biased view of America, but certainly a truncated view because, each news network can only show a certain number of stories, so we may not get the full picture. But one of the narratives that we're getting at the moment is America is the epicenter at the moment, and in America, New York is for this thing. And
Mhm.
there is a lot of people who are wanting to open up the country, but there is a lot of medical advice saying actually we need to lock down the country. And if we don't lock down the country, like here in New Zealand, we've locked down the country for 4 weeks. It'll be 4.5.
Mhm.
We're getting let out next Monday, and it means we've been locked down. Like I went to the supermarket for the first time yesterday,
Mhm.
and I've only driven my car 3 times in 4 weeks. So we've been in our houses trying to kill this thing, and it seems that is the best way to kind of get on top of it, but the narrative we're getting from America is there's enough of a percentage of the population that are like, fuck you, we're going to go outside. I'm American, I'll do what I want. That it kind of it seems problematic to actually getting on top of the issue.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, I would say the majority of Americans don't have that mentality,
Yeah,
but when you see that kind of stuff, it sticks with you and it's fun to put on the news,
yeah,
right?
yeah, of course.
You look at the college spring breakers and stuff, and you look at isolated parts of the country where they're not taking it as seriously, and it's definitely problematic.
You're right.
I think probably Florida is the state that most people are upset with right now in the U.S. just because they left their beaches open for a while and they want to reopen the beaches. But I think Nevada is really really good. Everyone is self quarantining pretty much and staying indoors. I barely left the house. I go to my girlfriend's house and I go to the grocery store and that's it. And I think they can use cell phone data to determine which areas of the country are doing the best in
Right.
terms of isolation and not going out. And Nevada is like one of the top five states from what I remember hearing. So I don't really get that sense from where I'm at here. But yeah, obviously New York is a huge, huge problem out there. I don't know exactly. Everyone's living in really close quarters, so
Mm.
obviously that is difficult to contain it under those circumstances. Um, but I mean, I think for the most part, everyone's taking it really seriously. My parents and my family, they all live in Northern California, and everyone's taking it seriously there. There's a lot of cases in California, but it also has about 40 million people. So
Mm-hmm.
per per million people, the number of infected isn't like astronomical or anything. But you look at how many cases there are overall, and it's a lot.
Yeah, yesterday over 40,000 dead. It's shocking.
Yeah,
I know, as you say, proportionally wise, that might be different per capita, but still, that's a
yeah,
huge. I mean, that's a stadium, of people just gone.
yes. It's crazy to me that there's probably around 800,000 now that have been diagnosed with coronavirus in the U.S. Somewhere, I didn't look at the numbers today, but I think last I checked was like 750, a little bit over that. And every day there's around 30,000 new cases that are diagnosed. So it's just crazy to me that it's gotten to this level in the U.S. and mostly in the Northeast, uh, whereas in China it seemed to have topped out at around like 80,000. It doesn't make sense to me.
I,
Who
I, I
knows
don't
if we're
I
the
don't know
numbers accurately,
I don't
but
know if you can believe the numbers coming out of China. I mean, not to sound too conspiratorial because I'm not, but I spoke to one of these podcasts I did was with the Beijing bureau chief for the Washington Post. She happens to be in New Zealand. I happen to be back in New Zealand, so I caught up with her, and she was like, you always can't trust whether it's GDP or whether it's number of coronavirus cases. You just can't always trust. So I almost think that we should ignore the numbers coming out of China and look at all the other countries. Probably as a
yeah.
as a as a fairer thing to do. Um, yeah, I feel it seems that because this thing is quite infectious, very infectious. the message. So we had Easter weekend a few weekends ago, and we even got told by our government, you can't go to your holiday homes because they didn't want us traveling. I guess the equivalent is, you don't want to go from Las Vegas to Los Angeles because you could be taking it into another area if you had it. So they didn't want that. And people were getting turned around on the road by police and saying, you're not essential travel, go home, sort of thing. So we really have had that lockdown mentality, and our Prime Minister came out and said after the Easter weekend, those people who tried to get to their, we call our holiday homes either batches or cribs, depending on where you are in the country, trying to get to their batches or cribs, you could be responsible for another death. And I'm like, yeah, that's true, because that's been our story. Our message has been stay at home, stay safe and save lives. But I also thought we're a selfish people, us human beings. If the Prime Minister had said, you trying to get to your holiday home could cause the rest of the country to stay inside their houses for another 4 weeks, i.e. not getting rid of this actual thing, that probably would have been a better message. And I wonder, for lovely America, all those people who are out there protesting at the moment about the shutdown are going to be the reason that this goes on for another 6 months rather than trying to get on top of it in 6 weeks, which is ironic and slightly counterproductive to the message they're putting out there, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I think that it's just a very difficult problem to have. Obviously, I don't think there's any simple answers when you look at the economy and the stock market,
Yeah.
and then the unemployment rate at this point. All those things. It's very tough to consider all those, and the mortality rate and how infectious this disease is, and find some kind of balance and find some optimal solution.
Yeah.
I just don't. I think you're never going to get anybody to. I don't think.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the what we have figured out from watching our government is, there's no perfect solution. That's what you're saying as well. There's nothing that's perfect here, but as much as we can, we want to get as many good solutions and mitigate as many bad solutions, and that's probably all we can hope for. The infectious rate and the mortality rate is really interesting. We had a retirement complex here in Dunedin where it got into the elderly people, and I don't like giving out incorrect factual information, but I'm pretty sure about 20 of those people ended up in hospital, and I think 5 of them died. So amongst the elderly and frail, it's a massive mortality rate. So here in Dunedin, we've got a very big University of Otago, and when it started happening, the messaging from the university to its students, who are all obviously kind of 18 to 21, getting pissed every night of the week and running at each other out of his bedrooms. That's sort of what the life of them is. But the message was, save your nana. That's what the message is. Save your nana, save your papa. There's, let's stop this coronavirus. And that's sort of been the mentality that I've been going all the way through. It's, even though there's a bit of grey in the old 40-plus beard now, I'm not the target, the worst target for this thing. But my dad, who turns 80 in a couple of weeks, he is, so trying to look after them rather than going, freedom, liberty, don't oppress me. It's like, actually, I'll give this up for those retirement village people. And on the grander scheme of things, 4 weeks out of my life, yes, it's, we're billions of dollars in debt now because of it, but, hopefully saving hundreds of lives. Ireland is the same population as us, and they've had, I think, 500 plus deaths. I think we've had 12, and wow. I think part of that is because, and I mean, proportionally, obviously we're 5 million. So we say 60, 5 threes are, I said I was good at maths before, 5 sixes. So yeah, so say 60, 70 times smaller than America. But, proportionally, that's still a really low sort of death rate. And compared to Ireland, we're 12 versus 500. So that's what the lockdown has done. And I mean, countries are entitled to do whatever they want. They're independent, sovereign states. But, I wish more people would look to the lockdown that happened here and consider that for themselves and go, actually, I'm not being oppressed, and it's not big government trying to beat me down. It's actually big government trying to save my life and my nana's life as well.
No, I share your mentality. I've been pretty much quarantined for over a month now. And I'm mostly thinking about my dad in particular. He's 66 and not particularly healthy. So, you know, I mean, he's pretty healthy for the most part, but just when things get into his lungs, it's really hard for him to kick that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this would be the worst of the worst getting into your lungs. I mean, like this is, I don't want to say this is the worst ever flu because it's not a flu, but it's like pneumonia times 10. So this, no, you do not want that. Hey Brad, it's been an hour we've been chatting, and it's been a whole lot of fun. Is there anything that you want to leave? Let's say people like me who love poker, love the idea of poker, love playing poker. What can you leave us with? Is there anything you want to leave us with? Maybe it's a good website. Maybe it's actually your obviously your YouTube tutorials. Is it just youtube.com/Brad Owen?
It is youtube.com/Brad Owen Poker.
Brad Owen Poker. So people can go there and learn. And I would advise people to avoid the last video with the talking cat. That was ridiculous. But they're really good videos. And for people who are trying to get into, I guess, your sport, which it is now, eh? Does it feel right calling it a sport? I mean, it's on ESPN.
I mean, no. I mean, it's a board. It's like, I think it's more like a board game. You know, board games I wouldn't consider a sport.
Board games. Like so I'm looking forward to the Monopoly series to be on ESPN as well. That'd be grouse.
Right, exactly, yeah.
The other thing is, if it's a sport, it should be in the freaking Olympics. Get win a gold medal.
I mean, you can be, because you don't have to be in shape to be one of the best poker players. I think it helps just to I think it helps your brain operate more efficiently if you're in shape. But other than that, you know, it's not a necessity to be good at poker.
You must, I imagine sitting at a table for 8 hours, as you know, you are just sitting, but still, you know, I've got a rooted back from rugby and basketball, basically. So I'd probably struggle to sit there for 8 hours playing poker with my arthritic back. So there's got to be some kind of conditioning. I mean, it is interesting to think about the people that you don't see any like massively unhealthy looking people at those final tables very often. So even though you say you don't have to be fit or anything to play poker or to be good at it, maybe those people who have the stamina still need to have an element of health to them to help them get through big tournaments and stuff. Because it must be arduous to playing 12 hours of poker a day for 5 or 6 days.
Yeah, the one thing that you need to have to be a good poker player, whether it's in a cash game or tournament, is discipline. So you have to have discipline with table selection, bankroll management, the cards that you play,
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. Avoiding tilt, and so I imagine that carries over to other aspects of your life. If you have good discipline in poker, you probably are able to maintain good discipline in whatever your diet or exercising or whatever. But I mean, Greg Raymer won the main event, and I think it was 2004. And he's a big dude, and he still is relevant in the poker world. I think he just won a big tournament within the last year or so. And there's a handful of other guys that are that way.
Cool. Well, so Brad Owen Poker via YouTube. I was having a look on your socials and stuff. You're on Instagram. Are you anywhere else? Do you have yourself a website or a Facebook public page or anything else like that you send people to?
I just have the Instagram at Brad Owen 1, and then on Twitter at the Brad Owen.
Did you look up who got Brad Owen? Saying you had to have Brad Owen 1? Someone stole it off you?
No, I'm pretty embarrassed about my social media names.
Okay. Hey, dude, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. As I said to you at the start of this, we don't really know where this got. Obviously, most of this was poker related, but really glad you shared with us at the end and stuff about what's going on in America and what you're seeing as well, because that's a part of what we do. We want to talk to people about life, the universe, and everything, including poker. So thanks, man. It's been fun. I really appreciate you giving up a bit of time. And maybe this is one of the benefits I get from the coronavirus shutdown, if you had a little bit more spare time to talk to us today rather than traveling the world playing poker. So I'm grateful, and I appreciate your time greatly.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. It was fun for me too.